as we were breathing and relaxing, a thought that came to my mind this evening on the topic was that the mind is a mine. And really, there is incredible power in our mind and incredible treasures in the mind. But we need to learn how to tap into that and how to utilize that in a way. Um, so, one of the first things that I found very helpful and useful, and it's a very natural thing to do, and that is that to really learn to um, cleanse the mind. And you cleanse the mind starting off with breath. Because once you breathing in deeply, you are naturally beginning to focus on your breath. And as a result of that, your focus is taken away from all the other thoughts that tend to buzz around, Um, and it's just giving space. So for me, mental health is really about learning to it's like our body as well, that to get our body to work optimally, we have to keep it clean. We have to, they say detox now and again. You have to eat the right things. You have to exercise it, etc. The thing that clogs us is waste. And waste in the mind are those waste thoughts that interferes in the proper functioning and which triggers the emotions of fear or the emotions of sadness or the emotions of anxiety, etc. And so how do we clear that? So we start off, the first step is really just breath, because there's a deep connection between breath and mind and health. And so when I just breathe deeply and slowly breathe out, um, letting my out breath be longer than my in breath, already my brain is signaling it's safe, it's okay. Because our nervous system is naturally built to constantly see, um, is there a threat anywhere or is it safe? And based on what it's reading in the environment, that's how the body's reacting. So the quick thinking in the head, or the palpitations in the heart, or the feeling of anxiety in the tummy, all of that is because of how I'm reading the environment. And um, there are so many things that today becomes the trigger for that anxious feeling, whether it's just someone hooting or you listening to dogs barking or whatever. So the body is on alert all the time. And because the body is on alert all the time, the mind is thinking very fast as well. So when we just take those few moments and just breathe, it's like we're saying, it's okay. I can rest. I can feel calm now. You know? And I don't know how you felt with this beginning exercise that we had, but just for 6 minutes, focusing on my breath and feeling my breath as I breathe it in and breathing it out, and doing it consciously, it's like it settles me. It settles me. And I begin to have a natural feeling of quietness come over me. So for me, that's the first step. And that is really just beginning to breathe consciously, breathe deeply. Um, and you begin to find immediately how your body begins to respond to that. Um, because there's a connection, Sometimes it's like the cells in our body have become more adapted to anxiety than to a state of calm and peace because of us getting more and more into that state of anxiety. And so, therefore, when the body is in that state, it's like it triggers the anxiety, you know? So as I breathe, I am giving a different signal, and so I'm unprogramming that programming that has happened within my cells as well. So I'm starting at a very physical level because it's a starting point. Um, Many times I find people struggle to meditate because meditation is ultimately the way to you know, develop a healthier state of mind. But we struggle to meditate because there's so much of anxiety inside. And so we have to start with baby steps. And that's the first baby step, just starting with my breath and becoming aware of consciously breathing slowly, breathing deeply, and just feeling my breath and how it impacts my body. The second thing that I would like to share, and that is um, observation of my thoughts. And to be able to observe my thoughts, I have to take moments where I pause. So I'm just going to ask you for a moment now, let's just take a few seconds. And I want you to just look at the screen of your mind and just see what kind of thoughts are you having. Um, what are you thinking right now? Are you thinking of your day? You're thinking of, uh, the evening, whatever. Just observe your thoughts for a moment. Okay, so having observed your thoughts, how many of your thoughts do you feel are just about the pending tasks? What are your thoughts about the past itself? Um, Thoughts of the future, or just enjoying the moment? What would you say? Those on Zoom can also unmute and share, or you can put it on the chat. But what percentage do you think, as you were reflecting on your thoughts, what would you say were you thinking about? Naomi, would you like to share?
Um, yes, I had a few chaotic thoughts going through my head,
Yeah.
issues that I have to resolve,
Mm.
to just escalate
Right.
and worrying how they will unfold,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes forgetting to be present and appreciating the very essence of love, which is
Right.
so such a gift.
Yeah.
Whilst the present.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now,
breathing actually puts you in touch with your essence of life.
yeah.
Remember that you're alive.
Yeah.
And you're,
Yeah.
so it's
Your thoughts so beautiful. So Naomi was just sharing that there were few chaotic thoughts around um, some pending task that she has to resolve and issues, but also how the breathing reminded her that I'm alive and just being present in the moment. Any thoughts from those on Zoom would like to share? Now, when we were observing our thoughts, what were your thoughts like? Were they of the past? Were they, situations that you have to work through? Were they relating to the past? Yeah. Where were you in your mind? Okay. Okay, someone is thinking about money, all right? Issues around money, scarcity, feeling a scarcity, or feeling a lack, or what? Okay. Anyone else? You're welcome to unmute as well and share. Food. Someone was thinking about food. Okay, are you hungry? Is that why you're thinking of food? Okay. Um, what you gonna cook or feed your family, maybe, right? Okay, so our mind goes all over the place. And what tends to happen is we often are very focused on what we have to do and what we need to sort out and the tasks that we are orientated with. And that in a sense is a bit of worry because for me, like worry is like a hole in a bucket. And as much as you pour into it, it keeps leaking out and you keep draining your energy. So becoming observant of my thoughts is very helpful because it makes me aware where is it that I am spending my mental energy. Um, and you know, and we tend to oscillate. It's not one thing all the time. Sometimes it's really about what had happened, and there's sometimes a bit of regret or our desire for what should have happened, or those kind of issues. And when we caught up in that level of thinking, it also takes us into a downward spiral. It drains us in a way. And on the other hand, we have become very um, um, focused on doing because it's like we feel that when there are certain tasks that we accomplish and certain securities that we wanting to establish for ourselves, and that's why things like money and that comes up because we still trying to create a sense of security through money, you know and that is why our thoughts go there so much, and that is why we begin to like worry so much, and that also drains our energy. And we oscillate between these two, but what tends to happen then is that it like worry is like a repetitive record playing in my head. And if you're constantly listening to the same piece of music, it is going to drive you crazy, isn't it? And so that's what's happening. It's like the same repetitive story that keeps going on in my head, and I feel stuck. I think that's what happens because when I'm worrying, I'm feeling stuck. And that feeling of being stuck is what then generates or triggers the emotions of anxiety or triggers the emotions of feeling helpless and hopeless. And so how to begin to, in some ways, almost snap out of that pattern. So that's why observation of my thinking is important. And we have to ask ourselves, it's like take moments in my day where I just take a pause and I observe my thinking. I don't have to wait for a situation to happen to observe my thinking, but I take a moment in my day and I just observe where is my mind? What is it that's playing out on there? And if I find that I'm looking at the past too much, or I'm uh, uh, you know just focusing on that feeling of what should be and what was and etc., then that observation of that thinking will help me identify what I'm feeling right now. And so it steals my enthusiasm, it steals my confidence, it drains me of joy. And so then I need to say, do I want to sustain this? Because it's like, you have a track that's put down, and the train will go on that track. And no matter how much you're trying to steer the wheel in front, it's not going to change the direction of the train because the track has been laid. And so the past is like that track that has been laid, and I can't change it. So it's going to be a futile exercise. And so I need to observe and recognize what is it that I'm doing to myself. And in that observation, then I realize that those thoughts are not useful. And so let me redirect them. Become present. Just breathe and become present and say, okay, let me think forward now. Let me think how I want to move on. So that's an important element. And then, of course, when our minds get into that worry state, again, I always bring myself back to that thinking that really, let me do what I can now. So, it's like in this moment, what is it that I need to do? Let me do that. Because people who worry a lot procrastinate. And the procrastination just makes the worrying even worse, you know, because they're stuck, they're feeling stuck. So it's like to observe, I'm worrying in this moment. And so let me just breathe, come back to a place of peace within me. And okay, what must I do now? Or what can I do now? And if there's nothing I can do now, then I need to trust. Okay, I've done what I can. Now let me just trust and wait and see. I always love sharing this story. Um, Brian Bacon, who was from Australia, and he worked as a business consultant, helping organizations, um, you know, um, develop new systems and change the way their um, organizational structure was and things like that. And he went to go visit his sister, and his sister was a farmer in Australia. And so he was chatting to her and saying how they were working in this one organization and the things they've put into place. But, the kind of results that they were hoping to see was just not happening. And so his sister was listening to him very carefully. And then she said, Brian, come with me. I've planted some seeds and I want to water them. I want you to help me. He said, yeah, sure. It would be a nice thing to just go out in the garden and whatever. And so she held up the hose and she said, okay, open the tap, please. And so he opened the tap and she said, more. And so he opened it a little bit more and she said, no, more, more. And the next thing, the water was gushing all over way. And she was standing and looking at it and screaming, grow, grow, grow. And Brian thought, oh, did my sister lose her head or what's happening here? But she was getting, showing him an awareness that, sometimes I think our biggest challenge is is allowing the space for that growth. And nature teaches us everything happens in its own time. So be patient. And that's one thing that I have always sort of had to remind myself because, um, you know, I have a lot of energy and like to get things going, but you have to learn to also then just breathe and allow and let it happen at its own pace and not to feel that kind of tension internally because it's not happening at the speed that you want to. So that's another element of it as well. The third thing that I found, which is important when we observing our thoughts as well, and that is just to always remind the self that what I'm seeing and how I'm seeing is just a slice of the reality. It's not the total picture. I'm only holding a particular perception of what is unfolding in front of me. And and that is so important because I think many times we get into that feeling of right and wrong and good and bad and this should happen and that should happen or whatever because we hold a particular perception and we get stuck on that perception. And as long as we get attached to our perception, we we block ourselves from actually listening and learning and responding and being aware of where others are coming from. And that's where often it it creates the tension internally, but also the tension between us in a way. Um, so, you know, it's just reminding the self what I'm seeing and what I'm uh, observing is just a perception, and it's not completely objective. It's a subjective perception because I have my own filters. And if I am patient and I become more of an observer, it gives me a chance to have a wider perspective. And when I have a wider perspective, then I can have a more informed way of responding rather than reacting from my own limited understanding at that point in time. And that takes away a lot of excess thinking, and that takes away a lot of that internal tension of has to and should be and um, all those questions that we have, how, why, if, but, etc. um, it simplifies life when you just learn to be more of an observer rather than always feeling that you need to direct the course of things. And it's a subtle lesson, um, because as I said, our emotions get so attached to our perceptions, and that's why we have to give that space for ourselves in that way. The next thing to help with mental health is also, you know, as adults, I think we get so focused in fulfilling the adult responsibilities, and we don't give ourselves time to really just um, do the things that we enjoy doing, working with our hands, doing creative things, um, being light and childlike, spending time in nature. Um, you know, we I just find that it's to find that balance, of giving that space for the self, of not having to do, but giving that space just to be. You know, it was raining on last week, Monday, I think it was. Was it raining last week, Monday, or this Monday? No, last week, Monday, it was raining. Yeah, one of the days. And I realized, it was just so lovely to see the rain after such a long time. And I had the thought, I'd love to just sit and watch the rain the whole day. Now, you know, it's things like that. Do we give ourselves permission just to enjoy the moment? Or do we always feel, no, I can't do that. I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do the other. So I think that's for me as well. Another thing is also giving space just to be, enjoy nature, enjoy just taking time to read something that you always wanted to, um, doing something with your hands or whatever. It's like we have to move away from the head and, come back to what makes the heart feel more fulfilled. And that then also helps to create a better balance. And it's a healthier state of being for the mind itself. And the final thing that I want to share, and it was something that I remember Sister Jayanti once sharing with us, and that is that, hold on to your good memories. Uh, we tend to have a tendency of remembering where we failed or where we were unhappy. We tend to remember that more than our successes or the happy moments or the joyful moments or the encouraging moments that we've had. And it's like, nurture yourself by remembering those good memories, because what that does is that it builds within me an attitude, of being grateful. And gratefulness has a very powerful impact. The more I practice gratefulness, the more it um, it keeps my mind in a positive mode. It's like it creates a positive mindset. Um, I think in some ways, um, the way the world tends to operate, and we kept getting fed with so much of things that are going wrong, that we've become very critical in our thinking. And so we have to like shift that critical mindset to a positive mindset. And I think gratefulness does that. Suddenly, the more you practice gratefulness, the more you see lovely things happening for you, the more you see lovely things happening around you. And that, in a way, um, it not only ignites but sustains that feeling of hope, which I think is an important emotion, because you only can find courage and strength and determination and focus and, positivity when there is that flame of hope within, in a way. So gratitude plays a huge role in cultivating a positive mindset that can sustain that sense of hope as well within. So those were some of my thoughts that I wanted to share in terms of tips for mental health, to have a healthier internal set. So I'd like to leave a little time now, if anyone has questions or your own thoughts or comments or whatever, so that we can take that up as well. Yeah, a little bit of engagement. Yeah. Mm.
I'd say something.
Yeah, sure, Naomi.
What you say is so valid about control. We want to control outcomes. We want to know what the end result will be of every endeavor instead of releasing it, letting go. And we're so busy holding on that we lose the present moment, which is all we really have.
Yeah.
Because that's what life is. Life is about continuum of present moments.
Yeah.
And we lose that totally because we're so focused on past and future. So there's a huge lesson in letting go. But what you say about gratitude is so valid because we begin to appreciate what we do have instead of focusing on what we don't have, what hasn't yet materialized.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very, very positive mindset to cultivate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Lovely. Thank you, Naomi. Naomi is just sharing that the aspect of gratitude is so important, because it's like focusing on what I do have rather than thinking about what I don't have, and that's the key thing, because um Yeah, I think if we look at it, because we tend to live life in such a outwardly focused way, we're always seeing what the other has. We're always comparing ourselves. We're always, sometimes without even realizing, competing with the other. And that outward focus, in a way, is what then takes away the joy. It takes away the joy. And so when I become more inwardly focused, and with gratitude, it helps me to, in a very natural way, to see what I do have. um, then it doesn't matter about others around me, but it's like there's a kind of fullness that I discover in myself. In Hindi, the words go very beautifully. They say, the one who is introvert, and introvert, not as we tend to interpret introvert, but introvert in a sense of someone who is inwardly focused. Antarmukhi, antar means inner, mukhi means the face. So having an inner face, the one who's facing the inner face in that way, is the one who always will be happy. And I like that aspect, because I think an equivalent word for that is almost like, the more reflective I am on what is within, that builds that gratitude inside for me. And that becomes a strength, because when there is that sense of gratefulness, even when there are challenges, I approach the challenge from a place of fullness and not from a place of emptiness, which is a different mindset to approach things with. I have, and how can I draw from what I have, rather than thinking I'm lacking and I'm not having. So it does shift the mindset a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing Naomi shared, which was very important, is that we are always so focused in trying to control outcomes. But life is just a continuum of present moments. So the more present I am, the more I can take the fullness of the moment. And also, I think one lesson we have as well is that when we are present in this moment and being the best for the self in this moment, it guarantees my future. You know, it's like that's what it does. It's like where what I'm being now will reflect for me in the future. So instead of worrying about trying to create a future, be the future you want now. So it's like it's the present that creates the future. But so be present, fully present in what you want to be, rather than thinking what you have to do. Yeah. And it is that kind of balancing thing that we need to create. Of We've become so focused on doing that we have forgotten how to be. And I think that has affected us mentally so much. So the more I allow myself to be, the more that I feel grounded and steady in myself, and the more I begin to feel um, a kind of internal um, guarantee of what the next moment can offer for me. Yeah. Okay. So anyone on Zoom would like to share, or on the chat, please do so. You can unmute yourself, or you could even um, just write in the chat itself some thoughts. Okay. Okay, so Carol is sharing here. Sometimes one has feelings of non-achieving. This happens because of procrastination and daydreaming of what if. So to help one to become self-actualized, it's good to write a to-do list of jobs for the day and stick to it. Yes, absolutely. Um, you know, it's like interesting with procrastination. I think there's two things that are linked to it. One is fear of failure, and that's why we tend to procrastinate. And the second thing is also um, this aspect of not having self respect. I think less of myself, and so um, I don't have that confidence in my own capacity. So, um, a to-do list is good, Carol, because it gives a sense of direction for one and focus for yourself. But the deeper inner work is that work of um, building faith in yourself and not to have that fear of not being good enough or failing. Because you would find that that's always what sort of becomes the barrier to cross into fulfilling what you need to do. So so that's a bit of the inner work that I feel is linked to that tendency of procrastinating as well. But that's a whole topic of its own that we will take another time. But just a little bit that I wanted to share on that. And okay, Cyrus is sharing my question. A baby is born with a pure soul. As the person grows, is the soul tarnished with negative information that is taken through the senses, or does the soul remain pure and the body changes in terms of purity? Okay, what happens is that the soul is born, comes into the body, and um, it has a record um, of what it brings with it from its previous life as well. But that record is merged, and initially it's like the pure self, which is always there, is more on the surface. And as we start growing, you know, what tends to happen is we become more conscious of the world around us, and we begin to start creating an identity based on the world and the influences around us. The first influence is our body, and then our gender, and then our family, etc. And in that process, what happens, two things is the conditioning of the world. Then I begin to absorb that conditioning into the soul. But also the impressions from my previous life that I have come with, they also begin to come more onto the surface. So it's both. It's both of what I'm absorbing in this moment and what I have come with as well that begins to influence me. So it's the journey of the soul. It's not, the body is just the carrier, but it's the journey of the soul. It's the soul that goes through these experiences and impressions that it begins to hold. And then also when we our process of purification is actually the process of letting go for the soul. The body is just the carrier in that regard. So Saras, I hope that answers your question. And then we have Bianca, how do I allow myself to be? A good question, Bianca. Um, I think one thing that is so important is um, coming back to uh, my true self. And that is reflecting on who I feel I am as I let go of all the layers that I have carried with me. So I have carried many, many labels, and recognizing that all of those labels are things that I've picked up along my journey. But sitting quietly and just asking myself, you know, what do I feel I am and who am I? I remember one day, this was many years ago, I was sitting um, at the gardens in Cape Town, Company Gardens behind Parliament. So my offices were not too far. So lunchtime, I used to walk to the Company Gardens and sit there lunchtime. And I was sitting there and I was just like reflecting on what do I um, see as my strengths. I was just reflecting on that. And so I was thinking of these qualities that I was like listing them in my mind. And then I had such a awareness, everything that I was saying is my strength was because someone told me that that is my strength. And I said, but who do I feel I am? You know, if someone said, "Oh, you're very a quick thinker," whatever, well, that's what they said. But what do I feel I am, and who do I feel I am, and what is important for me as a being? So I find that kind of reflection to really connect with my deeper values is very important. And that then allows me to be very comfortable with me. uh and when I'm very comfortable with me, I can be me wherever I am. It's like I can just be, even if I am um you know going shopping or whatever. It's like I can just be very stable and comfortable and free in who I am. Um, so being just to be is more a state of mind than anything else. It's the ego that we have is always creating a push or a pull. Um, and so when we recognize that and realize that actually to be is really that I don't have to get into this game of trying to prove or trying to defend or trying to impress or trying to whatever. It's just like breathe and just be comfortable in knowing who I am. And what I am is precious. So for me, it's that deeper state of soul consciousness that allows me to be and not get into that game of the ego, because the ego is always there, and it's always like a shadow following you, and we don't have to be afraid of the shadow, but we just need to be aware of the shadow, and always it encourages us to step into that deeper practice of soul consciousness. Okay, so that's from Bianca. Hope that okay. So there are no other questions or comments. Um, I would like to now just take us into a guided meditation, because we're coming towards the end of the hour. And this meditation is really just to allow us to take that experience of just coming back to that center and experiencing that state of inner stillness and quietness. Okay, so let's do that. And we'll have a little meditation now. listening to the waves of the ocean. I just allow myself to take this moment and to relax. Breathing deeply. Feel your breath as you're breathing in through your nose and breathe out slowly. Let your in-breath be slow and long, and let your out-breath be longer. And with each breath, allow yourself to relax the body, releasing the tensions, discomforts. Just breathe it out. And for this moment, just for this next few moments, I choose to be just with myself, connecting with my inner self. Letting go of thoughts of the day, the thoughts of doing. Focus now on the world, my heart, and my feelings. Put my focus on as I relax this body, I feel myself becoming light. And I go deep with that quietness. Giving myself that space. It's like diving into the ocean, being further away from the surface. Becomes more quiet, still. And my inner self, my deepest self, I recognize it as a space within of stillness, calm, peace. I am consciousness. Peace is my true nature. Peace is my innermost foundation, that place of deep stillness. And as I reconnect with that stillness, I feel anchored and light. I also feel free. Everything I need lies within me. That awareness makes the heart feel full. It's feeling being rested. So I enjoy this inner quietness and stillness. I enjoy these moments of just being present to myself, to the peace that lies in. So taking a deep breath, gently breathe out. Take this moment to become aware of yourself, space you are in, present environment. Continue to hold that feeling of stillness with you, that feeling of being free in your own being. Thank you. Om Shanti. So Om Shanti all. And thank you for joining this evening. And have a good week. Take care and hope these tips were useful. And if you would like to give feedback at some point a week later, what worked, what didn't work, it will be great to hear from you. Okay, thank you, Om Shanti. Bye-bye. Thank you, Namrata. Thanks.
It is so insightful.